I'm here with my friend Ahshuwah Hawthorne, and we just want to get straight into it. How have you seen a technology like Bitcoin impact particularly your area of expertise, and that is missions? Missions for the kingdom, missions for the church, missions for the gospel. Talk through some of the ways in which you've seen Bitcoin impact that arena.
Yeah. So I've been down this, we could say, rabbit hole of studying and learning about how Bitcoin relates to missions for the last 5 years. And we won a grant from Mission Nexus, which is this missions network, and they gave us a grant to essentially study and research all the different use cases for how Bitcoin can advance the work of the gospel among the nations. And we traveled to El Salvador, to Kenya, to India. We brought in missionaries, we brought in Bitcoin technologists to workshop together to develop new solutions to learn what's already been tried. And I would say we've learned at least 3 significant use cases, okay?
Great.
So first is the economic community development, empowerment, microfinance, financial sustainable resources for the unbanked. So Bitcoin, if you're in the US and you have the monetary privilege of the US dollar and the US banking system and your Robinhood app, all those things, you have access to investable assets, you have access to so many different ways to raise capital. That's all not available to people that live out of that kind of monetary regime and without that financial privilege. And so for those communities, having Bitcoin opens up so many doors and opportunities.
So just to cut in there, you're basically saying there are a lot more people, for example, with smartphones who could have wallets than banks and bank accounts, like billions of people.
Yeah. There's at least 1 or 2 billion people who have a smartphone, who have internet, and do not have a bank. And all of the banking infrastructure that you need to get banking to these communities is very difficult to build, very inefficient, and extracts a lot of value, honestly, because they're not there to necessarily serve the community, they're there to make money off of the community. Bitcoin is an open source technology that you can deploy anywhere there's internet. So first, that's the democratization of finance, bringing more equality to opportunity to all these communities.
Okay.
So number 2 is another one. I'm actually wearing a shirt for this Bitcoin mining company, actually started by a missionary called Gridless, and it's basically uses Bitcoin mining, which you hear about it on the news. It uses a lot of power. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. In fact, if you are trying to bring electricity to a off-grid African community, you need something that can transform power into money, because then it can become an anchor tenant. They get like Starlink internet access out in the middle of the bush, and they get power from a river, and they mine Bitcoin with that power.
So, okay, just an example. Let's say you got a water flow situation, like a creek or a river, out in the middle of nowhere. You can slap a miner on there, generate power the miner that mines Bitcoin, and power the village at the same time.
So anywhere you have stranded energy, you can turn that energy into money that through the internet gets like linked up and zoomed into the global financial system.
Got it.
Okay? And the problem that Bitcoin mining solves in those situations is not just stranded energy that you use, but stranded people that have no access to power and no access to financial services. Bitcoin mining does both of those things in a market-driven, win-win-win kind of sustainable solution. So that's number 2, and that creates a baseline of human flourishing and trust bridging into that community that then the gospel can flow.
Got it.
So, and then finally number 3, which honestly is probably the most exciting. We actually just came from the Bitcoin for Ministry Summit that you guys were also at.
Yes.
And we had missions finance leaders from probably 24 different organizations and 50 leaders total that are trying to solve the problem of creative access payments. So the world is becoming more and more atomized, more and more separated and less globalized, and it becomes harder to get money into certain places around the globe. And it just so happens that where the gospel most needs to go, and the last remaining kind of edges of gospel advancement are also the hardest places to send money, and
Yes,
the most restrictive regions.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, what I learned just by word of mouth and speaking with people at this summit, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a year that we want to get to people that need it in all of these closed countries with authoritarian regimes, no banks, etc. All those scenarios, you can get them that money in essentially 10 minutes or less.
Oh yes.
Right?
Yeah. So all the standard banking rails, the like federal banking
Swift,
kind of Swift, or even third-party things, services that are able to use their own built-in rails, or like MoneyGram kind of Western Union things. All of that is a permissioned network. So they're going to give you permission to send money from one place to another. And hey, 9 out of 10 times, that's just fine. But it's the one time that they're not going to grant you the permission. I mean, a random example. I was in Africa, and my organization actually texted me and said, hey, we're trying to send money into Nigeria to fund this ministry project, and our bank isn't letting us because they think we're getting scammed or that we're supporting terrorism, and can you help us? So this could be small issues, big issues, friction, high cost, long waits, or entirely cut off. That's the results of working within a permission-based solution.
Right.
The Bitcoin network is permissionless, it's decentralized, there is no third party that you have to ask, can I send this transaction? You just do it. You can just send it. And so as we introduce this to mission leaders and finance leaders, their minds are blown.
Yes, and I can attest to that, having attended this summit on this past week, particularly some of the high up finance people, again, who are responsible, want to be good stewards of the donations that they received and the responsibility they have to ensure those funds are getting to the people that need it, and with a lower cost. Therefore, more of the money can get there. No 3%, no 5%, no 10% fees, right on top of that. And then one of the things, just to close that out, we had speakers who talked about how to be OFAC compliant in those situations. So there's resources there. Ahshuwah, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us about this very important aspect of God's Matthew 28. For the gospel to go to the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to be a resource to you guys however I can.
Great, thank you.